So, I'm getting my wisdom teeth out later this week, so odds are I won't be able to film videos for a little while. So, you might not see me this Monday, but I do have a video for you today about House of the Dragon, the first episode of the second season that just dropped. House of the Dragon is a show I have a lot of complicated feelings about, especially being a fan of George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series, and generally being a guy who likes to overthink every little aspect of a given story. I guess it comes from being a writer. My original impressions of House of the Dragon remain mostly intact, I think, what with the new information provided with the second season. It was a very interesting show, following the Targaryen house at the height of its power, and it's absolutely beautiful. As was the case with the latter seasons of Game of Thrones, it makes most big budget movies these days look like hot garbage. Uh, Now, I'm not going to point fingers or name names as to what movies came to mind, but you know who you are. House of the Dragon, by the way, but both now and with the first season alone, I think it just remains a much more colorful show and much more vibrant even than Game of Thrones. We've elements of true George R. R. Martin like characters and settings in this. We've got frickin' Daemon Targaryen wandering around, that magnificent murder hobo evil bastard, and the surprisingly devious and irresponsible Rhaenyra, who, in my opinion, is the rightful heir to the throne. That doesn't necessarily mean she deserves it or would even be a very good queen. She is impulsive and arrogant and very selfish, I think. By the end of the first season, she has gone through some growth, and she's really only made the default choice for, who should be the heir just because her opponent, her little brother Aegon, is who's been propped up, of course, by Alicent and her father Otto Hightower. That Aegon is a monster. He's just awful, right? They've wrongly put up this horrible grown-up Joffrey as king of Westeros, and I will not stand for that. But I digress. We're here to talk about the first episode of the second season, which was a wild ride. Spoilers abound, of course, but I think you know that already. We get to see Winterfell briefly, and even the Wall, following um, uh, the other of Rhaenyra's kids, the boy who didn't get chomped. But the Starks are off in Winterfell, and they're being all Starky, and they really aren't in a mood to help out with the war. What with winter coming and White Walkers and wildlings and all that. God bless you, you northern jerks. If Ned had only been more like you and not traveled south, Game of Thrones might have ended a lot differently. But the Lord Stark, or who I assume to be the Lord Stark at the time, he sends the Targaryen kid away with a promise of a handful of soldiers because, again, Rhaenyra is the rightful queen. They had a ceremony and everything, right? Whether she deserves it or not, I think she is the rightful queen. The rest of the episode is handled brilliantly, I think, with all the twists and turns of court politics that I just love. Um, and Emma Darcy does a great job showing Rhaenyra's grief and madness at the loss of her son, with apparently she has only one line in the entire episode. I didn't realize that at the time, but I saw people mentioning it online after the fact, and I realized that I think they're right. Yeah, that the only time Rhaenyra speaks in this episode is to demand vengeance for the loss of her son, saying that she wants Aemond Targaryen. Aemond, mind you, is the one-eyed, dragon-riding, edgelord psychopath who might very well have some sort of magic powers. He's got the freaking kaiju death dragon and an army at his back, at any rate, and that still doesn't really daunt our resident evil-ass Doctor Who from arranging his murder. Uh, More on that later. I think the first season made Aemond much more sympathetic in the long run, what with him being bullied and having his eye gouged out and being generally just a better person than his brother, right? By comparison, he comes across as seeming pretty good, but upon reflection, I realized that he is just as messed up as the rest of his family, and it's still not as bad as even his uncle Damon. Damon, who is pretty bad. Yeah. Aegon, on the other hand, is being characterized just really freaking strangely in this episode. Like he was just grown up Joffrey in the first season, and all kinds of horrible and really freaking horrible. Now he's listening to the small folk. Like I don't know what to make of that. He's like he's being really reasonable in like the sort of open public a court, right, where people are coming and petitioning the king and everything. He's being very nice, though he's still being a jackass around his family and the small council. Uh, I mean, his neurodivergent sister wife, meanwhile, the only like sweet, kind person on the show, by the way, is meanwhile rambling on about being afraid of rats and just being strange in general. Like, I do love the theory that she's some sort of green seer or dragon dreamer, as her predictions always seem to come true, and she definitely has the air of someone who perhaps knows too much. Really, I feel horrible for her. She does not deserve to be in in this universe. Really, Alicent, their mother, is obviously losing her mind and feeling her power slowly being stripped away. Though I did appreciate the scene where she, like a normal human being, has a reasonable conversation with her father about these feelings, and they agree to work together to see this business through. Sort of kudos to them. It certainly feels like something Cersei Lannister would not have been grown up enough to do. And come to think of it, Tywin wouldn't have been all that accepting of the conversation either. I think this scene alone proves that Alicent and Otto are smarter and more dangerous than their Game of Thrones counterparts. And speaking of Game of Thrones counterparts, I do just absolutely love that during the small council meeting, someone mentions the Greyjoys, and Aemond, the one-eyed murderous dragon-taming warlord, enters the room. Uh, I like to think that that's a Euron reference. I know it probably isn't, but I like to think that it is. Uh, the the episode was just very captivating, though I am not entirely sure where they intend to go with the characters. I have only a passing knowledge of Fire and Blood, as I've only read a few select sections uh, from it. But I do know where the story is supposed to be going. I know where it's headed. But I don't think that helps me much because there's all sorts of interpretations they might take, and as I said, I have no idea what they're doing with Aegon at this point. Is he possessed or something? Like, why on earth does he all of a sudden care about the common folk? It's such a weird scene, and I think it was meant to be odd. You can almost tell that something's not right there. But the episode, of course, it ends with this horrendous tragedy with an act of evil done on behalf of Daemon, Doctor Who guy Targaryen, uh, Helena's little son, and thereby Aegon's son, I guess, is murdered, and I know in the book it happened a little differently, and I'm pretty sure Rhaenyra had a much more prominent hand in said evil act, but I think it still works to somewhat even the playing field in terms of just how bad the different sides are. I've always been of the opinion that Daemon is just as bad as Aegon, really, except that for the fact that Daemon is also intelligent and really capable, which makes him kind of worse and more a direct threat to people's safety, right? Right. If you tried really hard enough, you could kill Aegon or have him deposed. That would be a lot harder to do with say Daemon, who's you know Daemon. But anyway, I think if the show has any downsides, it is that pretty much all of the characters are really bad, like bad people, sort of. There's not at the very least there's not really a paragon of virtue, shall we say, or even a lighthearted side character. Viserys in the first season was sort of that. That they even marred his character somewhat with a scene in the first episode that I feel to be somewhat incongruous with the rest of his characterization throughout the show. Of course, I mean the veritable murder of his pregnant wife, which I don't think the indecisive loves his family Viserys would have actually done. It didn't really seem to fit in my opinion, but I'm probably missing something there. Even so, not really there isn't a Brienne of Tarth in this. There's no Samwell Tarly, right? There's no one really to really root for as like the best, oh, this person is our hero. I mean, you've got Team Smallfolk, but that's about it. Uh, I do like to joke that even so far in the past, I remain Team Stannis the goddamn Manus, uh, but only like book Stannis. Show Stannis can burn in hell alongside Show Euron and Show Dario. Um, so I do still have high hopes for House of the Dragon. It can it can very easily go wrong. I think they sort of are walking on the edge of a knife, so to speak. And I still feel bad that I don't have anyone really to root for. Everyone sort of falls on a scale of like selfish and cruel and downright monstrous in the case of some of them. And I think there's a bit too much moral gray to make anyone seem a viable candidate for the throne, except for maybe Helena and Jace. That's his name. Uh, he at least doesn't seem like an asshole yet. They might prove me wrong. You never know. Uh, but I look forward to seeing more. Like and subscribe if you like the video. Hit the bell icon to always know when I upload new videos, and take care. So, yeah. Bye.